when finally you get to where you do realize what's going on, it was an X-ray, correct, that revealed everything. Take us through what you guys did to find out what was going on, and then what actually was going on.
Yeah, when we went to the doctor that day after I was actually feeling better, and my mom, a couple days before that, I couldn't eat or anything, but then I started feeling better, and then we actually went and they done every blood test possible, everything possible. I sat there we got there early in the morning, right when they opened up. Sat there all day, couldn't find anything, and I was like, just for giggles, let's just take a full body X-ray just to
see if we see anything.
Yeah. And then they done that, and then I remember going back, and I was sitting in the chair, and my mom, I seen them. They called my mom up to the front desk because I think it was like a kind of like emergency type place. I don't remember exactly what doctor place it was, but yeah, she went up, and I knew from that point, I didn't know exactly what it was, but I knew it wasn't anything good, just the way she looked at me.
And so that was kind of one of the questions that I had was, so they find it was a softball-sized tumor, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Where was the tumor at?
So it was a softball-sized tumor, and it was like in between my heart and my spine and my lung. It was like in between the whole area, which was what made it so bad because it was basically beside my heart.
And so because of how high risk the area it was located at, the tumor is inoperable, correct? So how did you actually get told, like, hey, you have this tumor, you have cancer? Who gave you the news? Was it a doctor that came in and said, Cody, this is what's going on? Was it your parents? Who actually broke the news that said this is what we've got?
I'm pretty sure it was a doctor because me and my mom kind of like done it together, or me, mom, and my dad really, and I think they might have told her first, but the doctor pretty much told me, and they had first thought it was, I think it was Hodgkin's they thought it was, well, they thought it was a different one, so they started chemo basically. I done immediate radiation. I done all the radiation that I can ever get, so if I get it again, I can't have any more.
Really?
That's okay. How bad it was. So they immediately done radiation. That helped a tiny bit because they had an idea of what was going on, or a similar idea. And then they thought it was Hodgkin's, so they started, the radiation didn't, it done a tiny bit, but it didn't do a whole lot. Really, it was kind of like, let's just manage it so you don't, basically, so you don't die.
More, right.
Because I was talking to my doctor a while back, and he was like, probably, if you would have been a week after that, you wouldn't have lived.
Wow. So you got there just in time to. So, what is that like? Like it's difficult for somebody like me who thankfully, even though I've been injured, have never experienced anything like this. A doctor comes in. How old were you at this time?
I think I just turned 17.
So we're still a kid. We think we're big at this time, but you're a 17-year-old kid, and you just get told that you have not only a tumor, not only cancer, but they can't even operate on it. What was going through your head, man? Like where do you go when you get news like that? Yeah, just kind of what were you thinking at that point?
I guess being so young, I didn't like the medical side of it. I didn't really have a whole lot of idea about it.
Right.
And it was a little scary at first, like maybe the first couple of days. But then after that, I was like, all right, what do we have to do? How do we heal it? How do I get back to racing? How do I get back healthy? Just at this point, what do we have to do to just beat it?
And that's kind of an interesting point. So it's Grey Zone Lymphoma is the name of the cancer that you had, correct?
Yep.
And so before the show, I told him I did a little Instagram stalking, a little Facebook stalking, and publicly, at least, as soon as you got the diagnosis, you were like, all right, let's go. Like, let's take this on. We're going to knock it out. And it almost didn't even seem like it was a big deal to you. Like, you kind of took it, and it was just something that you were already looking past, and you were, thinking, after I've beaten this, here's my plan. And so was that the way it was for you? Did your mentality kind of take over to where it was something that needed to be beaten, or was there a little bit where you reflected and thought, I could die from this?
I was probably in the ICU for like the first month, So I guess being in that environment, I kind of had an idea of what was going on. So there was a few moments I was like, where, all right, if I'm basically about to die, and if they don't do something, then I'm gonna die in the next week or two. So there was that reality of it, but at the same time, I was like, I can't change that. So just do what we got to do to beat it, and it was just that simple to me.
So, I mean, like, you hear people talk about feeling helpless almost because kind of like what you talked medically, at least, we don't know exactly what we're talking about when we get into this stuff. And so, was that kind of what you were hanging on to, was the fact that, they say if we do this chemo and we do the treatment correctly, what was the chance that you were going to beat it? Were they looking optimistic? Was it like we caught it in time? Or was it like, we're going to give this everything we got and just hope that it works out?
Yeah, basically from the beginning, it was just hope.
Just going for it.
Yeah, because actually my cancer doctor had no clue what to do for it to be in the beginning, so he had to get in touch with some other people. And like I said earlier, they thought it was one cancer, so when they started chemo for that and nothing was working, it just kept getting prolonged. I think it was like a week or two and nothing was working. And so I don't really, what was your question?
Basically, it was just like, so, and we can almost move on into kind of the next question, the mentality side of it. It's just, were you always like, let's just move past it, or did you get caught up in the moment?
I mean, there's the cancer side of it. There's not much you can do about it, but I guess I started to realize, and I've kind of always been that way with everything else in life, your mentality is most of it, if not all of it. So I was like, even the medical side of it, there was nothing I could do, and even they didn't know if it was going to work. And the chemo, when it wasn't working, and they started another one, and it started working, it was like a little period where it was going pretty bad, but then it started picking up pretty quickly. But during that time, it was still the same to me. Like, there's nothing I can do about it personally. They're hoping that they can do something about it. So if they do, they do. And most things in life, if not all things, are mental anyways. So that's just the way I looked at it.
Well, and I'm glad you bring that up, because I think the mental side of it is such a huge factor that I think is oftentimes underrated in a lot of things.
It's way too underrated.
Exactly. And so I personally feel like action sports athletes and motocross racers in general, you hear the term, we're a different breed. And I think that's true in a lot of senses, because our brains don't necessarily work like a lot of other people's. And it seems like when we're faced with challenges, no matter how crazy they seem, like, we're just capable of going for it. You just pin it and you just give it everything you have. How much do you think that racer mentality and the, treating it as though it's just a challenge, it's a race that you have to beat, how much do you think that played into the way you were able to tackle the treatment?
I think that has a little bit to do with it, I guess, because with other sports, it's team stuff, so you're kind of dependent on other people to get something. But with action sports stuff, it's all on your own, so that played a little bit part of it, but it was both. I guess it was kind of a mix of both.
Okay, and so going off of the motocross side of it, was motocross even on your mind? I mean, let's face it, you just got told you have cancer. I wouldn't blame you if you forgot all about the motorcycle and you're just focused on trying to live. Was motocross almost like a support thing to you, where you were able to hold on to it for motivation? How did racing play into your recovery?
I mean, I guess you could call it motivation a little bit, but for me, my goal was, from the time I was 7 or 8 to turn pro. So, and once they kind of got it under control, which it took a little while, but once they got it under control a little bit, I was like, all right, I'm still turning pro. This is going to take a few months. This might take a little while, but nothing's going to change. So that I wouldn't say the motivational part of it for me, but I guess that was just a part of the journey for me.
It gave you something to chase beyond the cancer.
I guess, not really, because for me, it wasn't like chasing something. It was, this is a fact of, I have cancer now. I can't change that. I was going to turn pro. I'm not going to let anything get in the way of that. So this is just a roadblock, I guess.
Okay. And so, yeah, like the cancer was just another step in the ladder for you.
Yeah, it was just a step in the whole process.
And I just find that really interesting. And I kind of, you told me a story before we started recording that I think is really interesting. Why don't you just go ahead and tell me what you think? Because I just think this is so incredible. So you have a permanent IV still in your arm. Where were you at in the treatment when this happened? Like in the beginning stages?
My mom's not gonna like this at all. I think they had put 2 different permanent IVs in. I think it was like the first one that I had. So it wasn't, I think it was like a month or 2 after it had started. I was probably like halfway through chemo. And I was just, like I said earlier about I wanted to turn pro and everything, and I didn't want to. It was just like a roadblock to me. So obviously I couldn't ride or do anything that I wanted to do. And looking back on it now, it wasn't smart, because if that IV would have got pulled out, and I was actually on blood thinners for these blood clots that I had too, and if I would have crashed, then I would have bled out instantly. So that probably wasn't smart.
Right. I was thinking quite.
But I just looked at it as, if I have to turn pro, I have to kind of stay in the loop of it. So I went riding like once or twice, maybe.
Just to clarify, in case anyone isn't getting what he's saying, this man rode motocross midway through his chemo treatments. In case you're wondering what a badass looks like, I just think that's incredible. And sorry, Mom, if I made you mad, but that's just a story that I think is insane. And so, you hear this story, you hear the way you were kind of treating this as almost it was just a part of the process, and it was something that, yes, you didn't want to have to overcome, but it is what it is. It's in your face. Let's get over it and keep going. What was the most difficult part of that whole process? I mean, like, was it, there obviously, I feel like there's got to be pain involved. The stress of not knowing. I feel like there's a lot of wondering that goes with any cancer diagnosis, especially if you're not medically qualified. Was there a lot of the just staying up at night wondering what could or couldn't happen? Was it the loss of the lifestyle? Motocross racers, we have kind of a strict schedule where we ride X amount of times and we train this amount. Was it the fact that all of a sudden you weren't this racer and you weren't on the path that you wanted to be to turn pro? What was the most difficult part of that whole journey right there?
For me, I guess just the part with cancer, there's not like there's pain here and there, but it's not like a pain per se. It's kind of hard to explain. But for me, it was more the fact of not knowing what was going to happen, or not like being in control of it. Well, not being in control of it, but cancer is and especially mine was so rare at the time. It's more common now, but it's a rare one to begin with, and mine at the time was really rare. So it was like the hardest part about it for me was not being able to do something about it, and not like, okay, this is what's gonna happen, this is what's not gonna happen. It wasn't like a set thing, I guess.
Well, I feel like as athletes, we have the ability to be very self-critical. We almost are eager to find out what we're doing wrong to fix it.
Yep.
And when we're told that we have something wrong and we don't have the ability to correct something to fix it, or to train more to fix it, I think athletes can get really lost in that, because we have this insane drive and this motivation to conquer whatever we've got. But with something like that, it's a waiting game, and something, to your extent, it's not even just a waiting game. You're putting your faith in other people. You've just got to trust that these doctors know what's going on, and know what's best for you, and you just kind of have to go with the flow. And so I just think that's an incredible story in its own. And I think the way you handled cancer, I mean, obviously each cancer case is different and stuff like that, but the fact that you were able to just look at it as, almost just this bump in the road, and it's not even that big of a deal, we're going to overcome it and keep on keeping on, that's just incredible.